Hello Year 6, this is our first maths lesson of the spring term and our new topic is percentages. We're going to be calculating percentages today. Alright, there's our learning objectives, calculate percentages. Now, percentages first of all, what are percentages? Well, they are a type of proportion. I always find it easier to remember what these are by looking at that second part, the word portion or part. Now, there are other things that we've covered already, which are examples of proportion, fractions and decimals. And just as we know that fractions can be equal to decimals, well, they can also be equivalent to percentages as well. Now the word percentage, we can break it down because percent means, well, can you guess? That word there, cent, where we heard it before, you might know words like century, centimetre, centurion. Now all of those things there, century, 100 years, centimetre, there are 100 centimetres in a metre, and centurion, the soldier who was in charge of 100 other soldiers in the Roman army. So percent meaning per 100, and even the sign for percentage sort of uses the 1, the 0 and the 0. And the 1 here going in between the two zeros like that. Okay, so lots of different little ways we can remember it. Now we're going to start today by looking at percentage webs. Right, that's our first lesson. Zooming across the other side of the board. Percentage webs, which is a bit like this. Might look a bit confusing now, but we'll come back to that. Now, as I was saying, percentages, they're equal to fractions and decimals. Now, for example, 50%, it's a good one to start with. 50% is equal to a half, which, as we know, as a decimal is 0.5. 10% is equal to 1/10, which is 0.1. 25% is 1/4, which is 0.25. We can show that in another way as well, because here we have our bars. We've got 100% at the top, the whole bar. If we divide that into 2, we half it, we've got 2 lots of 50%, because 50 and 50 make 100. And if we divide that by 10, we've got 10 lots of 10%, because 10 times 10 is 100. So we can use that knowledge to help us calculate percentages. If we know 100%, we can half the number, and we can find 50%. If we know what the number is, we can divide it by 10, and that will help us find 10%. So percentage webs, I'm going to go over to one of the sheets now, one of the blank sheets, spin across to the table. Here we have a blank percentage web. Okay, so we can have our number in the middle, any number we like. Can get the pen lid off. And just choose the number 180. Now we see there, if we want to find 10% here, we know that 10 times 10% equals 100%. So if we want to go the other way, if we want to take our number, which is 180, and find 10%, we can divide 180 by 10. We can use our jumps to do that, and we'll get the answer of 18. I'll show you why. Because if we've got our number 180, and that's the hundreds, the tens and the ones, if we were to jump the digits, that would be our decimal point. The 0 would go here, 1 jump to the right, divided by 10. The 8 would jump to here, and the 1 would jump to here. So that is 10% of 180, 18. Now, if we wanted to find 50%, we can half 180. Now, we can either try and do that in your heads. If you know that half of 18 is 9, then half of 180 is going to be 10 times greater, and it's 90. And we can prove that because we can do short division as well. We can do 180 divided by 2. 2 goes into 1. No, it doesn't. We'll carry that one over. Does 2 go into 18? Yes, it goes in 9 times. Does 2 go into 0? No. So the answer is 90, just as we found there. So we can add that to the percentage rate. Next, 25%. If you remember, 25% is equal to a quarter. So we can divide by 4. We can do 180 divided by 4. Does 4 go into 1? No. Does 4 go into 18? Yes, it does. 4 times, with a remainder of 2. Does 4 go into 20? Yes, it does. 5 times. The answer is 45. You may have also noticed that 45 is half of 90. That's because 25% is half of 50%. So you don't even necessarily need to do this step. You can find 50% and then half it, because a quarter is half of a half. Now, we used our jumps method to work out 180 divided by 10. We can do the same to find 1%, because that is 180 divided by 100. So if we go back to this working out here, we can jump the digits twice to divide by 100. Or we can look at this one and jump them once more again. So if we start with our number 180, 2 jumps to the right, the 0 would go into this column, which is our hundredths column. The 8 would jump into the tenths column, and the 1, the 100, would jump into the ones column. So that would leave us with 1.80, or just 1.8. Now on the next page we can show you the link between all of those things here. So as I said before, you can go from 50% to 25% by dividing by 2. 10% times 5 is 50%. 10% divided by 10 is 1%. So there are other ways to work these out. You don't just have to do the division each time. And we can look at a slightly more complex version here, because we can also have things like 5%. Now, 100 divided by 20 equals 5. And we know that because 5 times 20 is 100. In the same way, we know that 20% goes into 100 5 times, so we can divide 100% by 5 to find 20%. So if we do that same number, have our 180, and if we do 180 divided by 5, we can find 20%. 180 divided by 5 does 5 go into 1? No. Does 5 go into 18? Yes, it does. 3 times, with a remainder of 3. Carry that 3 over, and does 5 go into 30? Yes, 36. So that would be 20% of 180. Now, just as we could see the links between those other percentages on the previous sheet, if we know 20%, we can find 10%, because it's half of 20%. So 18 is half of 36. If we know 5%, 5% is half of 10%. Half of 18 is 9. If we know 5%, we can work out 25%, because 5 times 5 is 25, 9 times 5 is 45. If we pull that sheet away, you can see a slightly more complicated percentage work there with all the links between the different percentages. Now, if I go to the next table, we've got some of the worksheets that you will be working on after this lesson. The number space here, the centre of the web, looks a bit like an apple almost, doesn't it, with the spider's teeth on the circle, but that is blank, and that is for you to fill in. Now, you can try this with different numbers. So I've chosen the number 360. Good number 360 in maths, because there are 360 degrees in a full turn. And we've started here with slightly more complicated percentages, if you like. We've got the ones we looked at before, 10% and 50%. We've also got things like 30%, 75%, 90%. So just as before, if we want to work out 10%, we can divide by 10. 360 divided by 10 is 36. To find 50%, we will half 360, and half of 360 is 108. And then to find 5%, I can either divide 360 by 20, because 20 times 5 is 100%, or, as I said before, I can take the 10% and half it, because 5 is half of 10, and half of 36 is 18. And that's the first version of the sheet. The second version has more percentages again. So if you are feeling confident with that first sheet, you can move on to these ones as well. Now, 1%, we said to find 1%, we divide by 100. So 2 jumps, and that would get us 3.6. 10% is 36, 1% is 3.6. If we know 5%, which we do, we worked out that 5% is 18. Well, we can work out 15%, because 5% times 3 is 15%. 5% was 18. 18 times 3 is 54. Now these are interesting ones, 90% and 99%. Now, there are different ways you can do this, but perhaps the quickest way is if we work out 10%, well, we know 10% is 36. Now, rather than doing 10% times 9, which we could do, we could do 36 times 9, we could instead subtract 10% from the 100%. Because if we look back to the board here, we've got our 10% there. If we were to take off 10%, we are left with, see if I line my finger up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times 10, which is 90%. So if we go back to our sheet, and we know that 10% is 36, 100% is 360. If we do 360, take away 36, you could try this mentally, or you can use your column subtraction method. 0 to equate 6, we can't do it, so we're going to have to regroup. So borrow from the tens. 10 take away 6 is 4. 5 take away 3 is 2, that's 50 take away 30. And then, so there is our answer, that is 90%, 324. Now 99%, we can apply that same principle. We know 1% is 3.6. We know 100% is 360. So what can we do? Well, we can, instead of doing 1% times 99, which would take us a much longer time than simply doing 360, take away 3.6. If we do 100%, take away 1%, that leaves us 99%. So 360 take away 3.6. Now my class will recognise this instantly, because we always know if we've got a place value column in the tenths and there is no tenths value in the first number, we will have to put a placeholder in. So again, 0 take away 6, we're not able to do that. The next column has a 0 as well, so we're going to have to regroup from the tens. Now we're able to regroup from the ones, and we've got 10 take away 6 here, which is 4. Can't forget our decimal point. 9 take away 3 is 6. So 356.4 is 99%. You'll be able to really impress your grown-ups with these, man. Okay, last but not least, if that gets a bit too easy, which I'm sure it will for some people, we can start to look at even more complicated percentages, like 200%. What do we know about 200%? It's double 100%. What's double 360? Well, we can do it mentally, or we can do 360 add 360, or we could do 360 times 2. Whichever way you do it, you're going to get 720. And then 150%. Well, 150% is like 100% add 50%. So if we know 100% is 360 and 50% is 180, we can add those together to get 540. Now what you could do with these ones here is challenge yourself. You could pick a really obscure one like 37% is a nice obscure. Now how could we make 37%? Well, we could have 10%, 10%, 10% to make 30%. And then we could have 1% and 1%. Keep going until you reach 7%, or you could have 5%. If you've got 10, 10, 10, 5, 1 and 1, that will get you to 37%. 4 options there. You can try and test yourself, give yourself a range of questions to answer. And that's that for this first lesson on percentages. So percentage webs to start with, and we'll be back later in the week with some more ways to calculate percentages. Bye bye for now.